Hello, I'm Dan Trudeau. I'm the VP and Executive Recruiter at PRA USA. Now, we've been recruiting in the tech field for 30 plus years now, which has given us a front row seat to one of the biggest hot button issues of the day. I'm speaking, of course, about H1Bs and the green card process for immigrant engineers, IT workers, etc. Now, there are a lot of myths out there about the people who hold these visas who are in this process. We made a couple videos, one about those myths and debunking some of those myths, another one about how H1Bs relate to the very real skills shortage that we have here in the United States. This video today is to talk about updates to a lot of the controversies. Some of them, were there coming into 2020. Others have come up because of the COVID crisis, but they're all related to where things stand with the H1B visa programs and changes that have been happening to it. The biggest hot button issue when it comes to H1B visas has been the executive order signed by President Trump back in June banning the processing of new H1B visas. So the question is, we're several months later now, what's been the net effect of that executive order? Almost nothing. Why almost nothing? Because the executive order banned new visas only. If you already had a visa, or you were picked for a visa this year and you're waiting for processing, or you need to transfer a visa or extend a visa, that ban did not cover you. And here's the thing. Back in April of this year, as with every April, all the new H-1Bs were taken up. There's a lottery to pick who gets, an H-1B visa this year, and there's always way more applicants than people approved. So all those people were approved in April. So there are no new H-1Bs being issued this year other than that. Now, there might be some people who are affected, maybe if they weren't in the United States, or there's some exceptions to that, there's an issue in their processing, etc. But the vast, vast majority of people who hold an H-1B or were chosen for an H-1B are not affected at all. So really, other than some controversy, some publicity, things like that, the net effect of that executive order has been almost nil. There's another area of H-1B controversy where there's been significant developments in the last few months, but almost no one's talking about it. In fact, a lot of people on H-1Bs don't even realize it's been happening. And that is a pushback at the courts against many of the moves the current administration has been making when it comes to turning down people's H-1B visas. Starting a few years ago, a lot of people were getting visa extensions, transfers, or new visas denied for reasons that had never come up before. For instance, in one case, a guy had a general engineering degree, and the position was in a specific category of engineering, and the government said he couldn't get an H-1B for it because it was a specific area. He doesn't have a degree in that specific area, so therefore your H-1B is not valid. We won't give it to you. There's been other things like that too, where the government's interpretation of certain degrees and the related job, they've said that's a mismatch, it doesn't work, they've rejected people. Another big area is with third-party contractors and consulting houses. The government has been turning them down because they're going to be working at a third party. Therefore, we can't monitor their activity very well to make sure you're following that. In a lot of the cases, those people were also getting rejections at a higher rate than they'd ever experienced. Now, the change that's happened there has been that the courts have been pushing back against the administration denials, saying that their denials aren't valid. The logic behind them being you cannot change the standards for H-1B approvals without changing the law. In other words, the laws haven't changed in years. If 6 years ago, a general engineering degree could get you a job in a specific engineering area, you can't say that's no longer the case if you haven't changed the law. Same thing with third-party agencies, things like that. So because of that, expect the number of H-1B denials to go down significantly. We still expect there to be a lot of RFEs, requests for evidence, where the government asks you for more paperwork, more proof, etc. We expect those to continue, but the outright denials that we've been seeing and the spike in denials, that should flatten out or go down in the next several months, next several years because of these court decisions. And now the big question on a lot of people's minds is, in what other ways has the COVID crisis affected the status of H-1B people and the H-1B process? And I mentioned the executive order a little bit ago. That was done in response to the COVID crisis. But a more significant issue for people on H-1Bs that's not being discussed much right now is the fact that a lot of them are being laid off from their jobs. So they're being laid off from their jobs, and when your employment ends and you're on an H-1B visa, you get a 60-day grace period, a 60-day window to line up new employment. If, in that time, you cannot line up a new position to sponsor your H1B further, you will go out of status. And what out of status means is that in order to continue working in the United States, you're going to have to leave the United States, work through the consulate, work through the process overseas, get approved for a new H1B visa, and come back. Actually, I should say an extension of your H1B time on that visa, and then come back. Even if it's the same employer, if you go out of status, you've lost your ability to work here and you have to regain it. Now, this is a huge problem right now because, while engineering and IT has not had the level of layoffs, has not had the level of downsizing that other industries have, it's still happening and could continue to happen this year. And of course, if you go out of status, leaving the country and then coming back again is pretty complicated. It's outright impossible in many cases. So that is leaving H1B people who go past that 60 days, who go out of status, in legal limbo. And frankly, we haven't heard many responses, many answers to that yet that are very definitive about what are these people supposed to do, how can they deal with it. The system hasn't introduced, as far as we can tell, anything to make up for it. So that's a huge question mark right now that has to be answered, and it's one that we're going to be following closely. Because as I mentioned, this is probably the biggest threat, the biggest danger for people on their H1Bs right now, is being laid off, not getting a job in 60 days, and having their visas go out of status. Now, you might hear that and say, well, that's okay, right? Because then Americans can move into those jobs. But as we've pointed out in several videos now, that's just not how it works right now. We have a very big skills shortage in this country. If those people have to return to their home countries and cannot return, cannot come back, we don't have a whole bunch of American citizens or green card holders just waiting in the wings to take those positions. And when the economy turns around again, which it eventually will, especially again, the engineering unemployment rate right now is 4.3%, which is, that's in a good economy, that's a good unemployment rate. So when it turns around, we're going to get more engineering, more IT, more tech jobs opening than we have people for. And if people who were legally able to work here have been pushed out and are having a hard time returning, we're simply not going to be able to fill those jobs. And what will happen? That work still has to get done. There's a good chance that work's going to be outsourced. It's going to leave this country, which doesn't help us at all. We want to keep the innovation. We want to keep the work happening here. So this 60-day grace period thing really has got to be answered. A solution has to come up for that, or there's a real good chance that a lot of American-based work could again be pushed out, be pushed somewhere else, which is a very bad short and long-term thing for our economy. So that's where things stand with these topics in August of 2020. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Make sure you like, share this video, get the word out there what's going on, so people can have the real information. So again, make sure you subscribe to the PRA USA channel in the days, weeks, months ahead. We're going to be giving you information like this on the big topics of the day. We're going to be giving you timely career advice, help with your job search, anything we can provide with our 30 years of experience to make sure that you get the career you deserve.